It's a very regular occurrence that someone comes in the shop and they say, "Hey, fella, what's your favorite fly to fish ever?" And this one is kind of close to it. The Articulated Trout Slider in a mini size.
That's a big brown.
This one, without a doubt, has been my most effective articulated fly that I've fished. And yes, I fished the Cheech Leech. It's a great one. The namesake of me, Cheech. It's a great fly. But this one's called the Articulated Trout Slider, and it's built for movement, and it absolutely smacks them. It can be tied in a whole bunch of colors, but there's a reason why I show you this color. This color combo is the color combo. Okay, so with that, let's get going. We've done this video before, and typically on my larger slider, I have a size 1 Gamakatsu B10S in the front, and I have one of these, straight shanked Aberdeen hooks on the back, Daiichi 2461 or the Umpqua XT350. But this is usually just one size smaller than the B10S that I'm going to use. So on this fly, I've got a 4 in the back and a 2 will go in the front. All right, and I like to use the more slender, non-wide gap in the back of this because I think it helps move a little bit by not having too much metal back there. But the fly's slender enough that you can really get a fish to smack down on it. All right, so we're going to throw in 2 colors of marabou for the tail, and this fly is going to ride inverted. So for those of you from Idaho like Brig, just kidding, I think they know this by now, but inverted means upside down. Brig, did you know that?
No, you just taught me.
Okay, yes. See, Brigham is still learning. All right, on this fly, I like to have 2 different colors on it, kind of a tannish and some white. I've pulled these fibers from the side of the marabou. You can see they're not all lined up. That's perfect. It's going to make it ride really nicely in the water. Good taper, and I want that tail to be a little longer than the actual hook shank, so I'm going to tie it in right there. Show you a little hack. I'm going to cut this and use my thumbnail. You've seen me do this before if you've watched any of our videos. But if I clean those fibers out with my thumbnail and then just tie this down and wrap forward, it's not going to have any bump or a minimal bump. So keeps a nice slender fly. Do that with the tan first, and then I like my flies to have the lighter color on the bottom, kind of like bait fishy type. I don't know if it matters a ton, but because this is going to be inverted, I'm going to put a clump of white marabou on top of this. All right, so same program here. We'll get that tied in. All right, so tail's tied in. If you have to wrap it back a little bit to make sure they're both tied in the same spot, you do that. And now I'm going to make a dubbing loop, close it off. Okay, one of the critical parts of this fly is the metallic colored ice dub. Not all ice dub is created equally. These are just thin cut Angelina fibers. And for whatever reason, the metallic colors in this are very straight. So if I pull some of these out of the corner of the bag, you can see they have a lot of movement. They're relatively straight. So if I build a dubbing loop out of this stuff, it's going to move really, really well in the water. It doesn't work for all types of ice dub. So let's see, we have here, this one's called Minnow Belly. It's still pretty straight, but it's crinkly. Some of the other more crinkly ice dubs it doesn't work with. But if you get the metallic colors, pretty much works. Oh, you know what? Let's show them this one too, Brig. Electric purple, metallic purple. Not saying that that would work. All right, let's see here. So we're going to throw a dubbing loop together. I showed you the cool movement of the gold ice dub, and it uses a lot. Like if you're going to tie a dozen or 2 of these, you'll probably need 3 or 4 bags of ice dub. But the ice dub really is what makes it move. So here I'm building a loop, dubbing loop, just like that. We'll twist her up with the fancy old Smayan twister. All right, so I'm going to wrap this forward. And you can see I'm matting this down. You know, if you have some sort of deal where everything has to be perfect on your fly, this is going to make you cringe a little because it does mat down the dubbing. But kind of like my beard, that's why you got to have a comb. There's no other hope for it unless you run a comb through that sucker. Sometimes I find like dead animals and stuff in there. Not dead, they're alive. They're like making homes in there, Brigham. All right, so we're going to whip finish that, trim it off, get our fancy Velcro and brush this eye stub out and toward the back. The eye stub and the marabou like to play well with each other. Okay, so there we go. That's the back half of our fly. And yes, it does look kind of like a sparkle minnow, right? So a lot of inspiration coming from that fly. All right, the front hook, B10S size 2. Fully mill streamer stripper, any of these wider gapped hooks. The reason I'm using a wide gap hook is because this is going to have a pretty nice sized deer hair head on it. So we need a little bit of gap to accommodate for that. All right, I'm going to start my thread on the front hook now and build up a spot for some eyes. Fully mill has these really cool streamer eyes. They have these cool streamer eyes. They make them in either tungsten or brass. We're going to use the tungsten variety here because I like these to get down. And on this trout slider, unlike like a clouser where you put the eye quite a bit further back, I'm going to put it about that close to the hook eye. I just want a little bit of shank showing in front of that. So I'll just do some figure 8 wraps, one side and the other. And then around the base of this, and that will really tighten that thing up. Once you have that, you can go around each individual eye, and we're just building up thread. So we're going to put some super glue in there too. All right, so our eyes are pretty well set right there. And now we're going to attach the back section. We're going to take some articulation wire. This is, I think, the intruder wire from Hairline. You can use whatever you like, whatever you have. This stuff's really thin, really flexible, and really strong. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lay this on so that the wire goes a little bit over the eyes, and I'll wrap up to the eye and then back down. And you can see that I'm wrapping my thread pretty far down on this. I find that if I kick off my articulation section about here, as opposed to up here, I get a lot less fouls if I wrap it back here. So it's worked great. You still have a lot of hook to work with, and it only looks funky at this point of the fly. Once the other section's on there, you can't even see the weirdness. All right, we're gonna use an articulation bead. These are little 3D beads, and this one's the small size. I think it's a little 3 millimeter. You can use red, cream, gold. I think I got a cream one right here. And I'm just gonna throw 1 bead on there. You can do 2 if you want. This is a mini slider, so I don't want a ton of length, even though it has decent length. We'll thread that other back section through and back through the bead, if I can do it. And now I can pull this back section up through the bead to where I want it. So I want this set so that if you look at the hook eye, you should have maybe a loop a little bit bigger than the hook eye right there, and I want that same amount in front between the bead and the front fly. So I'll measure that out. Yeah, Brigham, I say measure, but at least I don't say regular. Okay? It's different. So there is my articulation connection, and you can adjust these, rotate them, and they kind of will play nice. So once you have that there, put your finger here, just follow your thread up to where the other one's tied off. And we're going to trim this one roughly the same length, about like that. Now I'm going to wrap back using really tight wraps and fold these down and catch them down. You don't need to go through the eye. This will hold really, really strong, really well. Okay, and we are going to cover this up because now's the time that we throw some super glue on there. Okay, so we're onto the front hook. I have super glue on here. We're, sake of time, put some on your finger and wipe it on your friend's desk if you want. And on this one, I'm not going to put both colors on there. I'm just going to put white because white's on the bottom. We just need a little bit of marabou to cover up the gap between the two hooks. If I can find a chunk of marabou that's going to cooperate, we'll throw it in there. All right, so I've farmed off some marabou off the side of a piece of a marabou feather. And you notice I'm not tying my fly in down where the articulation comes out. The marabou is going to get tied in up here, closer to where it's straighter on the shank. Pull this up. We don't need to worry about the bulk on this one really because it's going to be bulky enough. So I just wrap the marabou forward, tie it down, and trim it off. And same process as before. Dubbing loop of ice dub, wrap it forward. See how fast we can do this. We might not even need Brigham to speed it up. I used to tie these for our website, and I'd have to do like dozens at a time. So, and that's another good point. I'm using gold ice dub. You can also buy gold brushes. All right, so essentially, the dubbing loop just is a dubbing brush. So we're using dubbing brushes too. Mash that in there and wrap that up to behind the eyes. We had a little bit of a dubbing issue. So what happens when you put super glue on and the dubbing touches it then. All right, so we're just wrapped up to right behind those barbell eyes, and it does look kind of gnarly on the top, and that's fine because we just need a base there to hold all this deer hair. So brush that one out just like we did the last one. Okay, now this is the part of the fly this is where the rubber meets the road. This is the point where we're going to tie the deer hair head on. We refocused, we're ready for this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie on some GSP thread onto this and then just wrap it over the top of my other head, cut it off, and now we're tied in. The reason I use GSP thread is because you need to put a lot of pressure on this deer hair. It is absolutely critical. I'm using 200 denier. You can use 150 as well. This technique that I'm going to show you, we have an over the top, like from a top down view of this video on our skill builders. That is skill builder number 14. If you want to go there and see this and see how it's broken down a little bit more in depth. But let's just get right into it. So what I'm going to do is I have some white deer belly hair. If you don't use belly hair, it's not really going to be super white because they just bleach it at that point. And that works too. So if you have white belly hair, that's good. And we're going to get a nice healthy stack of it, and we're going to use a giant hair stacker. That's critical because when I dump the deer hair down into this thing, it needs to be able to move around to be able to spread out and line up. So if you have too narrow of a hair aligner, stacker, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be more of a challenge. So I'm going to farm out a whole bunch of this white deer hair. Maybe not quite that much because it's a smaller fly. I had more than this originally. All right, so this is how much I settled with. So that's a pretty healthy clump of deer hair. So once I have it like this, I'm going to take a comb of some sort and comb this out. This is more critical now that we're going to be flaring hair. Because when I put thread wraps through this, if I have all this crap in there, it's going to bind down. It's not going to make the hair look nice and separated when you do two different colors, etc., etc. So get that out of there. Into the hair stacker it goes. And you align that up, make the neighbors mad downstairs. So from here, I'm going to pull that out, and you can see how nicely aligned that is. And if I put my finger through here and push it a little bit, I get a better shot at grabbing that. If you have really big sausage fingers, though, do not get your finger stuck in this, because it'll happen. All right, so here I have a nice, healthy clump of deer hair. This is going to compress down when I grab it with the thread, and so I'm going to tie it in a little further back than I want it to sit. So I like these tips to touch almost the bend of the hook shank. So about like that. I'm going to realign these because it looks like I didn't quite get them all stacked up nice. So I'll just do it again. No big deal. Really make the neighbors mad. Make the dogs bark. Make the neighbors mad. Play a rhythm. All right, here we go. Much better. All right, so here I have that in my hand, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay that down so that they're roughly touching the bend of this hook. Grab this with like all 4 of my other fingers, or the hand on my offhand. That's called my left hand, right, Brig? Okay. I'm going to go over the top of this with 2 somewhat loose thread wraps. So I have those captured, and I'll see if I can turn this way. I'm going to put my thumb or my forefinger on top of this, and I'm going to pull my thread forward this way toward the front of the fly. And while I do that, it's going to flare. See that? I just pulled my thread forward. Let's see, you see my bobbin now. I'm pulling this way with my finger down, and those hairs are locked down in there. Look how tight that is. The reason I do this is now this is the base for my next color. So this is kind of a tan and white fly. So this is tan dyed Primo deer hair. This is from the body. But this color, you just kind of want to give it a little hint of different color. I've used like dyed camel. That's a color of deer belly. I've used tan, I've used natural deer, it all works. So I just happen to have tan right now, and that's what I'm going to use. So again, a fairly healthy clump. I might farm some of those out of there because we have a little bit smaller fly. I'm used to tying the big one. All right, so same program with the cleaning and prepping and stacking. Okay, we have the other section prepped and pulled and ready to tie in. So here's my other section of hair, and where I've left this indent, I'm just going to lay this down. Same thing, grab it with all those other fingers, and you just kind of push it down in there. And on this one, I'm going to wiggle my thread through the side of the white hair, come over the top, and go back down, and do that twice. Okay, so here we have a real loose tie-in, but it's kind of bound the hair. I'm going to put my fingers here. I'm going to turn it this way because this will look cool. And I'm going to pull, instead of pushing my finger down on top, I'm going to put them underneath to brace it. And when I pull this just flare into a really cool looking ball. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Boom. See, check it out. So that's really tight deer hair. Down tight in here, that's tight enough you could almost sand it. So we'll show you how to get to that part. First of all, see this ugly portion where the thread's coming out? We're going to cover that up with some bruiser blend. I'll show you the best way. But if you, at this point of this fly, if you turn it upside down, you need to bring your thread with it, because you do not want any more wraps of thread through that deer hair. All right, there's a little beard on this one that's bruiser blend in just cream color. We're just going to get a little bit of that, just taste about like that much. Print it in your fingers, and I actually like to turn it upside down, so right here, and lay that down on top. And you're going to just come over that kind of loosely and catch the eye on the other side. So it's not ever tied in to the hook, but I just did like 3 turns of thread around the eyes, and that's in there now. So once we have that, again, I'm managing my thread on top. Put it down and brush that out a little bit, and it will just kind of look like it blends in. See that? Kind of cool. All right, I better redo those wraps that unraveled. Okay, now I can't really show this part. Well, maybe I can. Here we go. We'll turn it this way. To whip finish this fly, you don't even whip finish. You take super glue and you just hammer down right here. Maybe coat a little bit more of that head. And what are these scissors? Oh, they were on the desk. All right. There we are. That's all we're tying in on this fly. So now it comes down to the trim. And the trim's absolutely critical. You do not want to use your scissors on this. We're going to use a razor blade. And again, we have Skill Builder 14 if you want to see the top-down view in a little more detail. Even though this is doing pretty good, right, Brig? Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this razor blade. I'll just see if I can put it like right here for a sec. And I'm going to bend this with my fingers. Now, a lot of you see this razor blade and you say, Cheech, put it in a tool or break it in half. See where that section is touching my thumb? That gives me the ability to hold it and control it way better than a tool and way better than if I cut it in half. I find that the tools are good, but you're more likely to cut yourself putting these in a tool than you are just cutting your fly. So we're just going to cut the fly. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to curve that blade so that it's roughly the same width as those eyes. You really got to bend it, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make this blade come up, and I'm going to say this is the path of the blade. I'm going to make that come up and kind of curve. All right, so once I have my razor blade here, we're going to kind of move up under and place it right there. And here we go. I'm going to rotate it back and forth a little bit as we make that sweeping cut. Everything falls off. And we have a few little stragglers. But look how tight the head is on that. That is going to make that push. And a lot of people say, well, and see here, on the other side, I didn't quite go all the way. So you're just going to come in here and clean up some of those. And if you have any tips or any butts that won't cut, just grab them with your fingers. They'll break right out of there. So that's a little bit bulky of a head, so I can even come in here more and reshape it if I want. Just like one more cut. So that's looking pretty good right there. Now, here's what happens with this. See how it's cut? It's in the way of the hook point. Deer hair moves a lot when it gets wet, and so I can almost put my whole finger in this hook gap. Okay, still, so I have good hook gap still. I'm going to poke them when they eat this. So one last step for this fly. I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to trim up this. If my name was Tom Rosenbauer, I would have used the cautery tool like 14 times by now. But I'm not. But you can go in here and trim it up and make it look pretty and everything, but that is the Articulated Trout Slider in the mini size. And the key here is the hard head that goes into the collar and makes it really dive or wiggle side to side.